I stood in the marble hallway of the Metropolitan Museum, wearing a custom Dior gown that cost more than my entire childhood, my arm linked through his. Aleksei Volkov, the most feared name in New York's underworld, looked at me with those steel-gray eyes that had once terrified me, and now held only devotion. "Ready?" he whispered in Russian, the language that had brought us together. Through the gallery doors, I could see them. My parents, sitting in the front row of the charity gala I'd organized, the one being covered by every major news outlet in the city. They'd flown in from Seattle the moment they heard my name attached to the Volkov Foundation, the moment they realized their failure daughter had become someone they couldn't ignore. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me take you back to where this impossible story began, the day my mother told me I wasn't worth the plane ticket to my own graduation. "Katya, sweetheart, we've talked about this." My mother's voice on the phone was patient, the way you'd speak to a slow child. "Your father and I have the Thompsons' anniversary party that weekend. These are important people. Surely you understand." I sat in my studio apartment, if you could even call it that, more like a converted closet in Brighton Beach, staring at my Columbia University graduation announcement. For years of working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, living on ramen and determination, all to earn a degree in international relations with a focus on Eastern European studies. Summa cum laude. And my parents couldn't be bothered to show up. "Mom, it's my graduation from Columbia." Columbia. Not community college, not online classes, I got into one of the best schools in the country on my own. Yes, and we're very proud, dear. But let's be realistic. What are you going to do with a degree in? What was it again? Russian studies? She said it like I'd majored in basket weaving. Your sister Jennifer has a real career. She's making partner at her law firm next year. That's the kind of success that matters. The comparison stung because it was meant to. Jennifer, 2 years younger, had always been the golden child. The pretty one, the successful one, the one who made our parents proud. I speak 5 languages, Mom. I graduated top of my class. I have interviews with the State Department and languages. She laughed, actually laughed. Katya, anyone can use Google Translate now. You wasted 4 years and all that scholarship money on something completely unmarketable. But that's always been your problem, you never think practically. Something inside me cracked. You know what? Don't bother coming. I don't need you there. Don't be dramatic, I hung up. Sat there in my tiny apartment where the radiator only worked half the time, where I could hear my neighbors fighting through the paper-thin walls, and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was furious. Furious at myself for still hoping they'd care, for still wanting their approval. But what happened the next day would change everything. Because sometimes the universe has a twisted sense of humor about how it answers your prayers for a different life. The Brighton Beach Market was my refuge. The one place where my useless language skills made me feel valuable. I'd go there every Saturday, shopping for the cheapest vegetables, practicing my Russian with the elderly vendors who reminded me of the grandmother I'd lost years ago. It was late afternoon when I heard her. An old woman, maybe 75, arguing with a young vendor who clearly didn't speak Russian. She was getting increasingly agitated, her gnarled hands shaking as she tried to explain something about her medication, about needing a specific type of herb for her heart condition. The vendor, a kid barely 20, was getting frustrated. Lady, I don't understand you. English. Speak English or leave. I saw the tears forming in the old woman's eyes, that specific humiliation of being invisible because you don't speak the right language. I'd seen it in my babushka's eyes years ago, before she passed. Before I could think about it, I stepped forward. Izvinite, I said softly in Russian. Excuse me. Can I help translate? The old woman's face transformed. Ty govorish po-russki. You speak Russian? Duh, konechno. Yes, of course. For the next 10 minutes, I helped her explain exactly what she needed. The vendor, once he understood, was actually kind about it. He helped her find the herbs, even gave her some extra for free. The old woman clutched my hand with tears streaming down her face. Spasibo, Dorogeya. Spasibo. Thank you, dear. Thank you. Pocaluista, I smiled. It's my pleasure. I didn't notice the men in expensive suits standing 3 aisles away. I didn't notice how the entire market had gone subtly quieter, how people had started moving with more caution. I didn't notice the way the air itself seemed to change, charged with a different kind of energy. Not until I turned around and saw him. He stood at the end of the aisle, tall and commanding in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my year's rent. Dark hair swept back, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the color of winter steel. He was staring at me with an intensity that made my breath catch, made every nerve in my body suddenly aware of danger. Aleksei Volkov. I'd seen his face in the Russian-language newspapers I read to practice. The Wolf of Brighton Beach. The man who controlled everything from the docks to the restaurants, who had more power in his little finger than most politicians had in their entire careers. And he was staring at me like I was the most interesting thing he'd seen in years. Our eyes met for maybe 3 seconds. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in those cold eyes: surprise, calculation, interest. Then one of his men leaned in to whisper something, and Alexei's gaze sharpened. He said something in rapid Russian to the man beside him. I was too far away to hear the words, but I caught the gesture. He pointed in my direction. Every instinct I had screamed at me to leave. Now. I grabbed my bags and walked quickly toward the exit, my heart hammering. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Male voices speaking low in Russian. I walked faster. Mississippi. A deep voice with a thick Russian accent. Miss, please wait. I didn't wait. I pushed through the market doors and practically ran to the subway station. Didn't look back until I was on the train, watching through the window as 2 men in suits stood on the platform, scanning the crowd. They'd been following me. Stupid, Katya, I muttered to myself, my hands shaking. So stupid. I thought that would be the end of it. A close call, a story to laugh about later when I was safely employed at the State Department, far away from Brighton Beach and dangerous men with winter eyes. I was so wrong. The next morning, I had my graduation ceremony. I walked across that stage alone, no family in the audience, no one to cheer when they called my name. I collected my diploma with honors cords and a smile that hurt my face, surrounded by other graduates whose families had traveled from across the country to be there. After the ceremony, I stood outside Columbia's campus in my cap and gown, taking a selfie to post online because if I didn't document it, did it even happen? A group of other graduates were taking photos with their families, all tears and hugs and pride. I turned away, blinking back tears, and nearly crashed into someone. Congratulations. I looked up into steel-gray eyes. Aleksei Volkov stood there in a black suit, holding a bouquet of white roses that must have contained 3 dozen blooms. My heart stopped. How did you dropped this yesterday? He held out my student ID. I must have lost it in my panic. Columbia University. Katya Morozova, Senior. It wasn't difficult to find out when your graduation was. I took the ID with shaking hands. You came here to return my ID? I came to see if you were real. He said it so simply, like it made perfect sense. To see if an American girl who speaks perfect Russian with a Moscow accent actually existed, or if I imagined her. I'm real. Thanks for the ID. I have to go, have dinner with me. I stared at him. Are you insane? I know who you are. Everyone in Brighton Beach knows who you are. Then you know I'm not a man who makes requests lightly. His eyes held mine. One dinner. To thank you for your kindness yesterday. That woman you helped, Vera Pavlova, she's very important to me. She helped raise me after my mother died. I was just being decent. I don't need thanks, and I definitely don't need dinner with, I caught myself before saying, a criminal. With a man like me? He smiled, but there was no humor in it. Smart. You're right to be cautious. But Vera hasn't stopped talking about the beautiful American girl who spoke to her like she mattered. Who treated her with respect when everyone else treated her like she was invisible. He paused. That kind of kindness is rare. I'd like to know more about the woman who showed it. I can't. I have interviews this week, I'm moving to DC for a job, one dinner. 2 hours. I'll have you home safely by 9. He held out the flowers. Please. There was something in his voice, something almost vulnerable beneath all that controlled power. And maybe it was the loneliness of spending my graduation day alone, or maybe it was the way he'd said, the woman who showed kindness, like it was something precious, but I found myself taking the roses. One dinner. Public place. And I'm only saying yes because of Vera. His smile was genuine this time. Of course. Only because of Vera. That's how I ended up having dinner with the most dangerous man in New York. And that's how my entire carefully planned life got derailed in the most unexpected way possible. The restaurant was Russian, elegant but not ostentatious. Aleksei had reserved a private corner booth where we could talk without being overheard. He ordered in rapid Russian, then turned his full attention to me. Tell me about yourself, Katya Morozova. There's not much to tell. Graduated today, have a job lined up in DC, your accent, he interrupted. It's Moscow, but old Moscow. Pre-Soviet. Where did you learn to speak like that? I smiled despite myself. My grandmother. She left Russia in 1991, but she never stopped speaking as if she was still there. She raised me more than my parents did, taught me Russian from the time I could talk. She said knowing languages was knowing power. She was right. He poured wine for both of us. Your parents don't care that I graduated today, I said before I could stop myself. The wine was loosening my tongue. They think my degree is useless. They think I'm useless. My sister's the successful one. Aleksei's eyes sharpened. Then your parents are fools. I laughed bitterly. You don't even know me. I know you speak at least 3 languages fluently. I know you stopped to help an old woman when everyone else walked past. I know you graduated summa cum laude from Columbia, which means you're brilliant. And I know you're brave enough to have dinner with me despite knowing exactly who I am. He leaned forward. That's more than most people reveal in a lifetime. You investigated me. Of course I did. No apology. I investigate everyone who interests me. And you, Katya Morozova, interest me very much. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about growing up in Brighton Beach, about his father who died when Aleksei was young, about building his business empire from nothing. He was careful about details, but I understood what he wasn't saying. I told him about my grandmother, about studying international relations because I wanted to build bridges between cultures, about how invisible I'd felt my entire life until I found languages, the one thing I was undeniably good at. You're not invisible, Aleksei said quietly. You're extraordinary. Your parents are too blind to see it, but that's their loss. When he drove me home, in a car that probably cost more than my entire education, he walked me to my building door. Thank you for dinner, I said awkwardly. And for the flowers. And for, not being a terrifying criminal. He laughed, actually laughed. The night is young. I might still terrify you. Too late. You already did at the market. Good. He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, expensive and subtle. Fear keeps you cautious. Caution keeps you alive in my world. I'm not in your world. I'm leaving for DC in 2 weeks. Something crossed his face. Of course. Your job. Your carefully planned future. He pulled out a business card. But if you change your mind, if DC doesn't work out, if you want to use those languages for something more than government paperwork, call me. Why would I do that? Because I need someone like you. Someone who understands both worlds, Russian and American. Someone I can trust. He paused. And because I think you're tired of being invisible. Working for me, you'd never be invisible again. I took the card because it would have been rude not to. Good night, Aleksei. Spokojnej noci, Katya. Good night. I watched his car drive away, then went upstairs to my tiny apartment and stared at his card for an hour. He was offering me everything I'd wanted, to be seen, to matter, to use my skills for something important. But he was also dangerous. Criminal. Everything I'd worked so hard to escape from Brighton Beach, from my working-class roots. I threw the card in the trash and went to bed, determined to forget about steel gray eyes and a voice that said my name like it was something precious. 3 days later, everything changed again. I was at my waitressing job, the last shift before I quit to move to DC, when they came in. 3 men in expensive suits, moving with military precision. The restaurant went quiet. Everyone recognized danger when they saw it. They walked straight to my section. The leader, a man with a scar across his cheek, smiled at me. But his eyes were cold. Katya Morozova. My blood turned to ice. Yes. You're friends with Aleksei Volkov. I'm not, I barely know him, but he knows you. And that's a problem. He leaned forward. See, Volkov has something we want. Territory in Red Hook. He won't negotiate. But maybe if we have something he wants, he'll be more reasonable. I understood immediately. They were going to use me as leverage. He doesn't care about me. I met him once, he came to your graduation. Took you to dinner. Had his men watching your building to make sure you got home safe. The scarred man smiled. Oh yes, we've been watching. Volkov doesn't do that for people he doesn't care about. Before I could scream, before I could run, one of them grabbed my arm. The other customers looked away. In Brighton Beach, you didn't get involved in business that wasn't yours. Come quietly, and nobody gets hurt. Make a scene. He opened his jacket to show a gun. I went quietly, my mind racing. This couldn't be happening. I'd had one dinner with Aleksei. One. How was I suddenly in the middle of a mafia war? They put me in a black SUV. Drove for 20 minutes to a warehouse in Red Hook. Inside was cold, empty except for a few chairs and cargo containers. They tied me to one of the chairs. Don't worry, the scarred man said. We already called Volkov. Told him what we want for your safe return. He'll come. And then we'll negotiate. He won't come for me, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm nobody to him. We'll see. They left me there with one guard, a younger guy who looked bored. I tested the ropes, tight but not impossible. My grandmother had taught me more than Russian. She'd grown up in Soviet Russia, where you learn practical skills for surviving dangerous situations. It took me 20 minutes of slow, careful work, but I got one hand free. Then the other. The guard was on his phone, not paying attention. I ran. Burst through a side door into the night, my feet pounding against concrete. Behind me, shouts. Gunfire, they were shooting at me. Oh God, they were actually shooting. I zigzagged between cargo containers, my heart trying to explode out of my chest. Found a gap in the fence, squeezed through, kept running. Straight into a wall of a man. Arms caught me before I fell. I looked up into steel-gray eyes filled with cold fury. Katya. Aleksei's voice was rough. Are you hurt? They took me, they said, I know. I know what they said. He pulled me behind him as more men appeared, his men, all armed. "Dmitri, get her to the car. Now." "But, now." A man I recognized from the market, Dmitri, took my arm gently. "Come, Miss Morozova. Let Aleksei handle this." "He's going to kill them," I whispered. "Yes." No hesitation. "They took something of his." "They threatened you." "Yes, he's going to kill them." I let Dmitri lead me away, back to a waiting SUV. Behind us, I heard gunfire. Shouting. I didn't look back. 20 minutes later, Aleksei got into the car. There was blood on his white shirt, but his face was calm. He looked at me, really looked at me, checking for injuries. "Did they hurt you?" "No. I escaped before," my voice broke. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving me shaking. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know they were watching. I didn't mean to, this is not your fault." He pulled me against him, and I let him, too terrified and exhausted to resist. "This is mine. I should have had better protection on you. I should have anticipated this. You had men watching me. From the moment I returned your ID. I knew being seen with me would make you a target. I thought I had time to explain, to give you a choice about whether you wanted this life." His arms tightened around me. I was wrong. I pulled back to look at him. "What does that mean?" "It means you can't go to DC anymore. It means my enemies know your face, know your name, know you matter to me. It means the safest place for you is with me, under my protection." "For how long?" His eyes met mine, and I saw the truth before he said it. "Forever, Katya. For as long as you're connected to me, you'll need my protection." "I'm sorry. I never meant to trap you like this. I should have been angry. Should have fought. But sitting in that SUV, still shaking from being kidnapped and shot at, all I felt was a strange sense of inevitability. My carefully planned life was over. And somehow, impossibly, I wasn't entirely sorry. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay. Okay. I'll stay. Under your protection." "But Aleksei." I looked him straight in those winter eyes. "I'm not just going to hide in some apartment being protected. If I'm stuck in this world, I want to be useful. I want to work. Use my languages, my skills. Make me your translator, your liaison, your anything, but don't make me invisible again." Something blazed in his eyes. Pride, maybe. Or respect. Deal. "But Katya?" He cupped my face in his hands. "You could never be invisible. Not to me." And that's how I went from graduate with no family and no future to the most protected woman in New York's underworld in the span of one terrifying night. The first few months were an adjustment. Aleksei set me up in a secure apartment in his building, my own space, but with guards outside 24/7. He brought me into his legitimate businesses first, his import-export company, his real estate holdings, his network of restaurants and shops. I became his translator for Russian business deals, his cultural consultant for negotiations, his bridge between the old country and the new world. I was good at it. Better than good, I was exceptional. "You have a gift," Aleksei told me after I successfully negotiated a deal that had been stalled for months. "You don't just translate words. You translate meaning, context, respect. That's rare." I started to understand his world, the complexity of it, the rules that governed it, the strange honor code that existed even in illegal spaces. I started to see him differently too. Not just as a criminal, but as a man trying to protect his community, his people, in the only way he knew how. And he saw me. Really saw me. Asked about my day, my opinions, my thoughts. Treated me like an equal, not a possession. Celebrated when I successfully mediated a dispute, listened when I had ideas about expanding the legitimate businesses. "You're brilliant," he said one night over dinner at his penthouse. 6 months had passed since that night in the warehouse. You could have been anything, Katya. And you're stuck here with me. I'm not stuck. And I realized it was true. I'm choosing to be here. There's a difference. His eyes searched mine. Why? Because for the first time in my life, someone sees me as valuable. Not as less than my sister, not as the disappointing daughter, not as invisible, but as someone who matters. I met his gaze. You did that. You made me matter. You always mattered. I just made you see it. We'd grown closer over those months. Dinners turned into late-night conversations. Work meetings turned into debates about literature and politics. Proximity turned into something deeper, something neither of us had quite named yet. Until the night he kissed me. We were at his penthouse, celebrating a major deal I'd helped close. He poured champagne, toasted to my success, and when our eyes met, something shifted. Katya. My name on his lips was a question and an answer. Yes. I didn't know what I was agreeing to, only that I wanted whatever came next. He kissed me like I was precious and dangerous all at once, like he'd been holding back for months and couldn't anymore. I kissed him back like I was drowning and he was air. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead against mine. I love you, he said in Russian. Я тебя люблю. I've loved you since I saw you helping Vera in that market, speaking to her like she was a queen. I love your brilliance, your kindness, your strength. I love that you chose to stay when you could have run. I love you, Katya Morozova. Tears streamed down my face. I love you too. God help me, I love you too. Then marry me. He pulled back to look at me. Not because you're trapped, not because you need protection, but because I want to build a life with you. The legitimate businesses, the foundations, the future, I want it all with you by my side. Yes. I didn't hesitate. Yes, Aleksei. Yes. That brings us to tonight. 2 years after that kiss, 18 months after our wedding, 6 months after I took over as director of the Volkov Foundation, a charitable organization that supports Russian immigrants, provides language services, funds education. The Metropolitan Museum Charity Gala is the biggest event of the year. Everyone who's anyone in New York is here. And sitting in the front row, desperate to be seen with me now that I'm important, are my parents. They'd called when they saw my engagement announcement. Suddenly wanted to reconnect. My mother cried fake tears about missing me, about how proud they were of everything I'd accomplished. I'd ignored them for a year. But tonight, I invited them. Because I wanted them to see who I'd become. The evening began with cocktails and silent auction. I moved through the crowd in my Dior gown, speaking Russian with visiting dignitaries, English with city officials, French with international donors. I was brilliant and confident and completely in my element. My mother tried to approach me during the cocktail hour. Katya, sweetheart. You look stunning. We're so proud, don't. I cut her off, my voice pleasant but cold. Don't pretend we're close. Don't pretend you care. That's not fair. We're your parents, you missed my graduation because it wasn't convenient. You called my degree useless. You told me I'd never amount to anything. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. So no, you don't get to be proud now that it benefits you. My father stepped forward. Katya, don't be dramatic. We made a mistake, we admit it. But we're here now, you're here because you want to be associated with my success. Because you want to tell your friends about your daughter who married into the Volkov family, who runs a foundation that's been featured in the Times. But you don't actually care about me. You never did. Aleksei appeared at my side, his hand finding the small of my back. A united front. I think you've upset my wife enough, he said quietly. His voice was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. Perhaps it's best if you enjoy the evening from your seats. My father opened his mouth to argue, took one look at Alexei's eyes, and thought better of it. They retreated. Are you okay? Alexei asked. Perfect. And I meant it. They don't get to hurt me anymore. The program began. I gave a speech about the Foundation's work, about helping immigrants feel seen and valued, about the importance of language and culture. I spoke in Russian and English, my voice strong and clear. The audience gave me a standing ovation. At the end of the night, as we stood on the museum steps watching guests depart, my parents tried one more time. Katya, please. We're family. Surely, I turned to face them. Family shows up. Family supports you even when it's inconvenient. Family makes you feel valued, not invisible. You taught me what family isn't. But Alexei and his community taught me what family is. I took Alexei's hand. These are my people now. You're just strangers who share my DNA. My mother's face crumpled. You can't mean that. I do. Goodbye. We walked away, leaving them standing on the steps. I didn't look back. In the car, Alexei pulled me close. You were magnificent tonight. I had a good teacher. I smiled up at him. You taught me I was worth fighting for. Worth defending. Worth loving. You taught me that too. He kissed my forehead. What do you want to do now, Mrs. Volkova? Take me home. I rested my head on his shoulder. Our home. Our life. Our future. Here's what I learned through all of this: your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it. Your value doesn't diminish because someone fails to recognize it. And sometimes the life you planned isn't the life you're meant to have, sometimes the detours lead you exactly where you need to be. My parents thought my Russian studies were useless. That language degree they mocked. It led me to a man who values my brilliance, to work that changes lives, to a future I never imagined possible. To every woman who's been told she's not enough, you are. To every daughter who's been compared unfavorably to a sibling, you have your own path. To everyone who's ever felt invisible, you're not. You're just waiting for someone who knows how to see. The Volkov Foundation just announced our biggest initiative yet, full scholarships for immigrant women pursuing higher education, with special focus on language studies. We'll fund 500 women over the next 5 years. Women like me, who were told their dreams were impractical. As I announced it tonight, with Alexei's hand in mine and my parents watching in stunned silence, I thought about that lonely girl at graduation with no one in the audience. She would never have believed this future was possible. But she was wrong. And I'm so grateful she was wrong. My name is Katya Volkova. I speak 5 languages. I run a foundation that changes lives. I married the most powerful man in New York, not because I needed his protection, but because we chose to build something together. And the parents who couldn't be bothered to attend my graduation? They don't get to share in any of it. That's not revenge. That's simply consequence. The best thing you can do to people who underestimate you isn't to prove them wrong, it's to build a life so extraordinary that their opinion becomes irrelevant. I did that. And you can too.